Tombs of Amascut is the third raid released by Jagex, set in the Jalbatas pyramid within the blistering heat of the Kharidian desert. In this video, we're going to look at the lore behind the raid and how exactly we find ourselves taking down the Wardens, and namely the lesser gods of the Menaphite pantheon. To fully understand why Amascut is a threat, we first need to go over the story of the last pharaoh chosen by Tutankhamun, the god of the sun. Tutankhamun shaped the Kharidian desert and was the husband of Elidnes, with which he created Ikkha and Amascut using their divine essences. He is the main god worshipped by all desert inhabitants, though most towns and villages worship one of the lesser pantheons specifically. Despite being the head of the Menaphite pantheon, there's little information known about him other than what little pieces we can get from the game. He created 4 lesser deities of the pantheon: Amascut, Krondis, Heth, and Scabarus. These were created from 4 dreams that Tutankhamun had over the course of 4 days, according to the Book of Light and Day. Together, there have been 8 deities that have led the Kharidian Empire in what we now know as the desert, and those pharaohs that ruled Menaphos in the god's stead are now known as the sons of Tutankhamun and are buried within the Yal-Severat pyramid. The last pharaoh that was directly chosen by Tutankhamun was Osmanthon, described as a passionate hunter who wielded Osmanthon's fang, travelled across the land and fought off great beasts. It's thought that Osmanthon was pharaoh around the Second Age when the present-day Kharidian desert was invaded by the Zoroastrian Empire. Osmanthon fought on the front line in this war, which ended when Tutankhamun sacrificed himself to stop the invading forces, which in turn led Elidnes' widow to give Osmanthon Tutankhamun's shadow and the Elidnes ward before retreating to not only mourn her husband, but the fate of their daughter as well. Osmanthon would continue to rule for a time, before usurpers began to blame him for Tutankhamun's death and ended up killing him and his family, save for his son Mehar. The creation of Elidnes and Tutankhamun and the sister of Ikkha is the former Goddess of Rebirth and one of the 4 major gods of the Menaphite pantheon. After the bloody Kharidian Zoroastrian War, otherwise known as the Great War by the Menaphites, there was a relative peace that was short-lived. The greatest allies of the Menaphites, the Marjaroth, were convinced by one of their own to betray the pantheon and join Zaros. This betrayal saw Amascut change, driving her towards madness, and eventually she began to devour the souls that she was supposed to guide to be rebirthed. Declaring herself as the Devourer, she feasted on souls and reaped the destruction she caused upon the land, directly opposing her brother and the rest of the pantheon, who she held in great contempt. Through this madness, her mind spiraled even more. Eventually, she began to destroy her own temples and clergy, which resulted in Niti, one of her chief priestesses, to rise up against her and cast a curse to trap her in human form, limiting her ability to assemble willing disciples. Though this was a victory, Amascut retaliated with her own curse, binding her priests to walk the world as cats, hence the constant fear of them. You may remember that we first see her disguised as a wanderer during a quest. Well, this was just her ploy to obtain the soul of Clenta, a former high priest of Ikkha. During said quest is where she hypnotizes us and we find ourselves infiltrating his tomb to steal one of the canopic jars. Though Ikkha shows up and stops this plan in its place, Amascut flees before she can be caught. This leads us to the run-up to the tombs of Amascut, where the Kharidian spy Mesa informs you of suspicious activity in the necropolis ruins south of Sophanum. The initial report follows many disappearances of large numbers of Menaphite citizens, which leads to a direct breach of the quarantine on Menaphos. After your initial investigation, it's revealed that the missing Menaphites have been hypnotized by Amascut and were being used as slave labour to excavate the Jalbatas pyramid within the necropolis, the resting place of Osmanthon. Further investigating revealed that Amascut had control over the pharaoh of Menaphos and the remnants of the sect of Scabarus. This is combated by us, where we speak to the spirit of Mehar, Osmanthon's son, and learn of an incantation that has the ability to break the hypnotic trance, which is utilised to freeze the high priest of Scabarus. Though Amascut's schemes focus on quarantining Menaphos by using the Scabarites as guards, she also uses her influence over the pharaoh for unknown reasons, likely ones we will find out when we eventually get access to Menaphos. Her true ire was a pair of legendary weapons, which is the Wardens, 2 massive automatons built by Tutankhamun himself, one imbued with his essence and the other of his wife Elidnes. You see, when the war had ended, Elidnes had tasked Osmanthon to hide these weapons to ensure they didn't fall into the wrong hands, which is why these weapons are buried alongside him. As the Wardens have the ability to drain and transfer divine energy between beings, Amascut intended to use these weapons to ascend to true godhood, which is where another scheme of her unravels, in which she spent centuries capturing and imprisoning lesser deities of the Menaphite pantheon. The first god that was captured was Scabrous, utilising a dawn scarab named Khepri to achieve this. She exploited Khepri's desire to have children and ensure the survival of her race, and thus, the allure of promises from Amascut, Khepri willingly worked with her in exchange for having children smarter than herself. Though Amascut had used a loophole, after giving Khepri children who had the knowledge of a simple locust, she proceeded to destroy Khepri's mind completely, and as Khepri's consciousness faded away, she called for Scabrous, who answered and was captured. We fight essentially the husk of Khepri within the raid. Amascut was the next lesser god to be captured, as Amascut had once again exploited Baba's desire to keep her family intact. She saw her child as a lazy and arrogant ruler who would bring ruin to the thriving tribe they oversaw. Amascut was quick to promise a way out for them to rule forever. As soon as Baba had accepted, she felt the cold dagger of betrayal hit her back. Her entire tribe killed and resurrected as an undead army to be used to capture Amascut. The curse that had plagued Amascut slowly began to diminish, and groups of individuals dedicated to Amascut began to appear once again. One warrior named Akkha joined the cult known as the Children of Rebirth, which dedicated itself to Amascut's original form. So they planned to commit mass unalive so they could be reborn in a perfect form. The only one to survive this mass unalive attempt was Akkha, who was captured by Amascut and trapped in a sarcophagus, trapping him in a tormented state between life and death. This was used to lair and trap Heth, whom Akkha was dedicated to before. The apparent abandonment fueled Akkha's anger and he overpowered Heth, which led to his capture. The last god to be captured was Krondus. Amascut had used a gluttonous crocodile named Zabak who had abandoned Krondus' values and struck a deal with him to never go hungry again, in which he believed that meant having an endless supply of food. And as we all know, Amascut once again deceived Krondus, cursing him to cause everything he ate to turn to dust, and not allow him to die of natural causes. And we can assume that by feeling the pain and suffering that Zabak was feeling, Krondus came to assist, which is where he was captured. Once we deal with the 4 bosses and free the lesser deities of the Menaphite pantheon, we come to understand that they are weakened due to their years of imprisonment, and are unable to confront Amascut, though they do help to open the entryway into the lower level of the tomb where we have our final confrontation. We rush down and confront Amascut, who claims that the Wardens have already strengthened her, before she activates them and teleports away. Though the battle is long and tough, we manage to defeat the Wardens, who end up being consumed by a black phantom of unknown origin. And that covers the story leading up to and including the tombs of Amascut. What's next for Amascut? Who knows? I'm sure Jagex have a lot of stories planned within Gilnor, and before long we'll find out. But I'm sure that before long we'll get to visit Menaphos and see the state of it after being under control of Amascut for so long. Who knows, maybe we even confront Amascut in a quest so we can free the citizens of Menaphos and finally have them open their gates to the outside world again. I know that Menaphos is a city in RuneScape 3, so it would be great to see this addition. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please do like and subscribe. It'd mean the world to me. I'm planning on doing more of these story videos for the time being, but I'm happy to take suggestions for other video ideas. But for now, thanks for watching, and see you next time.